Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Sell More Book Show, episode 581. I'm Brian Cohen from Best Page Forward, joined by Mafia and rom-com author Rachel Van Dyken. Rachel, how are you?
I'm doing so great. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm great. I'm happy to be here, especially with someone who just does all sorts of sides of the genre fiction. You have your hardcore mafia guys and your rom-com laughers, and it's so interesting when we have so many people that are like, I have one lane and I stick with it. You're
Mhm.
not a lanes person.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know. Like I always tell people I write how I read, and I don't
Yeah.
stay in the same lane when I read at all. I have so many different interests, so I think that's why I did that. You know.
I think it's awesome because a lot of authors worry about, especially with all the right to market stuff, and you've got to stick with a certain thing, and you have to write 10 books and never diverge from it, that sort of thing. But you are proof that, hey, well, there is an exception. There are exceptions to this idea that you just have to go in one direction, which I think people will take comfort in. How did you I mean, in a way, it's bucking the trend to just say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to do that. Like when you heard people saying like, no, don't do that. Like what was kind of your response to say, no, I'm going to make it work no matter what?
I think it made me want to do it more. I don't like people telling me I can't do something because,
Yeah.
because who says who? I mean, it's kind of the same way as when you're writing a book. There are rules that people think are rules, but really some of my favorite books are ones where people kind of scribbled outside the lines. And so that's kind of how I felt
Yeah.
with with writing. And I think too, staying in your lane, I think financially and as far as like having a brand and business, like I understand how that's a very, very smart move to make. But I also understand that as a creative, it's very difficult sometimes for us to stay in that lane and not want to push ourselves outside those boundaries because we want to be creative and do fun, different things. So, yeah, it did spur me on to want to do it more. And has it been perfect the entire ride? No, but I don't think anyone's journey ever is in this industry.
What do you get feedback from readers that are like, I love your mafia and I love your rom-com? Like, do you hear from people that are like, I'm so glad that you write in these different directions?
So I have both. So I have some readers that are just diehard. They'll read anything that I write, which it's great. And then I have some that they pick and choose what they like. And a lot of them are either Team Mafia, they won't read anything else, even though I'm constantly convincing them or trying to convince them, hey, it's my voice, it's still me. It's just not their genre that they like to read. So, and then I have other people that just want rom coms, and I write also paranormal and fantasy and a whole bunch of other genres. So it just depends. I try really hard to make sure the message is always the same, though, that you're always getting me, you're just getting different worlds and different characters and different little universes in there. And so it is difficult, but especially with my ARC team, because a lot of times they are like, I'm only in here for the next Mafia book. And so we had to make rules where we were like, okay, listen, you get 3 or 4 passes a year. Because at the time, a couple of years ago, I was writing a lot of books a year. And then that's it. You can't just pass on every book and only pick and choose the ones that you want to read, because that's not, you get the book for free anyways. So that's kind of what we ended up doing. And it worked out really well. So, and also got them to be like, oh, maybe I do like Mafia, or maybe I do like rom com. And so that's kind of the way that we've dealt with it. And it's kind of like a book by book process.
That's I mean, it seems like a really smart way of handling it, giving them a couple of passes here and there, so that they don't just want to leave the list. They're like, no, there's another mafia coming. Um, so you said like it's still your voice,
Hmm.
it just in kind of through these different lenses. Like, what is in lieu of a brand of a genre? Like, what would you say is the voice of Rachel that always comes through?
Really snappy dialogue and very dialogue heavy, like very dialogue heavy. So no
Mhm.
matter what book you read of mine, they're always going to laugh no matter what. They're going to have a ton of dialogue, and it's going to always be snappy, lots of one-liners and a lot of run-on sentences, but very much entertaining in that way. Like even if it's a very angsty book, you're still going to have those moments, those safe moments, I guess you could say. If you've read any of my books, you're like, oh, this is her. This is what she sounds like. So that's usually why I say that, because if anyone's ever read me before, they know that they can come to expect that and across every genre.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, I mean, that makes sense. You are also a screenwriter, so the
Mhm.
snappy dialogue being part of your thing makes absolute sense.
It does end up, yeah. Um, so I'm looking through all this. So I'm curious, when does it make sense, do you think, to go, um, I don't know, from one direction and branch out to a different genre, like a different.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that when you are trying to get you're trying to focus in one direction and you haven't had success, you kind of need to make a decision.
Mhm,
You kind of need to make a decision on, is this because of some mistake I'm making, or is this because me and this genre don't connect?
well,
Like,
I kind of like that though. That's a more like that's deeper than I thought you would go. Is it because I'm doing something wrong, or because, yeah, I need to connect to something different? That's interesting.
because I do think I've seen so many authors on their second go around.
Mhm,
Like, I've seen so many authors go like, um, they've done something really interesting that is in their voice, but it's not selling for
mhm,
various reasons. And it could be that they just didn't have good covers, or they didn't have good book descriptions, or what have you, or they just didn't know how to write in that particular genre. Or it could be that that wasn't really their thing. That
mhm.
shouldn't have been the thing that they were going to write to succeed. And I've seen authors on their fifth series, on their sixth series, now they've hit it, and it's
Yeah.
just because they needed to keep trying new things. And so I think the issue comes in when there isn't a good fit, and they're writing book 12 in a genre that isn't a good fit.
Trying to push it maybe because they're ready to market, so they're trying to push it and they're thinking this
Mhm.
next one's gonna hit because this is what's selling, when really it's yeah, it's not what they should
Yeah.
be doing. That's You could probably do an entire episode just based off of that, I
I
think.
know. I know. No, absolutely. Absolutely. But hey, we're going to roll back a little because we actually went a little bit into the
Sorry,
lightning
I
round
teased you, sorry.
early, but you were excited. So
Yeah.
it's awesome. I'm going to ask a question from a previous week's
Yes,
episode.
yes. Mhm.
And then I'll probably ask this to you as well,
Mhm.
Rachel. So we'll see. Uh, Sue Hollowell, or so we asked, how do you define success for yourself and how do you celebrate success? Sue Hollowell said, I follow Becca Syme's guidance to build the house you want to live in, and that is generally my filter for business decisions. If I can stick to that, it brings more joy, which equals success. And let's see, Kevin Morgan said, by someone telling me my book helped them is a good metric of success. Helena Hattery said, "Do I feel good about the book or the work? If I feel good about it, that bone deep satisfied feeling, then it is a
Mhm.
success." How do you, Rachel, define success? And a couple people didn't answer this because people are weird about celebrating. How do you celebrate that success?
Well, I always celebrate, and I think that it depends. I mean, just as you get older, like, success means different things. When you're
Yeah.
young, success is I graduated, or success is I actually finished a book that's amazing and one person bought it and then my grandma bought it and told her friends. I mean, that's, back in the day, that was my definition of success. And then it turned into I want to hit a list, and then I want to hit number one on the New York Times, and then it gets bigger and bigger. And I think the problem with constantly having like lofty goals and those goals in general is sometimes that becomes your only goal and you lose
Yes.
sight of the actual like journey that took you to get there, and then also like why you wanted to get that goal and why you're writing in the first place. And so I've kind of dialed back, at least these last few years, and gone, okay, what is success to me? And success to me
Yeah.
is, did I put out something that I'm proud of, and did I put out
Mm.
something that people are going to identify with, even if it's something that's not going to sell? And that's been really, really, really hard for me to swallow, because I have for so long been like, get the book out, get it done, push this, do this, and if it didn't sell a certain amount of copies, in my mind, I'm like, well, that tanked or that failed. And that's such a negative headspace to be in, because then you think you're defining yourself by being validated by others, not just other authors, but validation by your sales numbers. and you've lost again sight of the whole concept and the whole reason of you getting there in the first place, which is getting the words out and making a difference. At least for me, that was it. Making a difference, getting words out, and not necessarily always hitting that list or making money in a sense, but making sure that
Yeah.
like I'm also validating readers and helping them and changing them. So to me, success is that it's impacting other people and it's getting the book finished and knowing that I'm proud of that book and that I didn't skip on something, I didn't slack. I didn't do it because it was work to me or because I had to do it or because I was writing it because all these people are writing this, so I need to write this now too. So it's just getting something really, really well thought of done. And if it sells, it sells. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I know I can hear people right now, even like not like in my head going, but you have to make money and you have to do this and you have to do that. And you're like, yes,
Uh-huh.
I get that. And I'm not saying that I don't, obviously I want to make money and obviously this is my job and I have to, pay my house, mortgage. Like obviously I
Yep.
have to do those things. But I think again, when you lose sight of the personal and the emotional parts of the writing, then you also lose those sales. I think it's tied together. I think there's no way you can just be one or the other. It's tied together. And I think when you lose sight of one, you lose sight of the other. And then that's where the panic writing comes in with a lot of authors where they just write to market, write to market, write to market in order to make that money. And then again, and then they wonder why they're not making the money or why they're not selling books. And I think
Hmm.
that's where you lose it is because you've lost the emotional attachment to it.
I love this answer because it's so well thought out. You almost like you make me think about how when we're starting out us high achievery types, and I get the sense that you have the bug like I do. Um we do have a lot of focus on that achievement aspect, on the dollars and cents, on what did we rank in USA Today, what did we hit. It makes it pulls our focus a lot more than the emotional component. But when we get to a certain you get to a certain point in your career, you almost need to come back to why you started.
Yes.
And if you don't, then you're going to get pulled into that trap of forever moving the goalpost. And almost the remedy for forever moving the goalpost is looking backwards to where the goalpost used to be emotionally
Yes.
and remember, oh, I did this. I need to celebrate this aspect of it, not
Yes.
just the money or the number.
Absolutely. And I think too, personally for me, I have noticed that when I've done that, I spread myself too thin. So
Yep.
then I start dropping the ball and then I'm not being the author I need to be. I'm not being the mom I'm supposed to be. I'm not being the wife
Mm-hmm.
because I'm so hyper focused and trying to do all the things and I can only give 10%. And so then to each thing and then my cup is no longer full. It's just completely empty and you can't give from an empty cup. And so I think that's with
Yeah.
writing that's yeah, it's you have to look back and be like, okay, why? Just where's the why? Maybe that's the simple answer. Where's the why?
Where's the why? No, I love that. I love that. Maybe when we come back to the question of the week, maybe we're coming back
Yes,
to where's that why.
I like
But
it.
awesome. So let's get into the top story here. I'll spiel through this and then we can talk about it. So, the top story of the week is Control P. If you're selling low priced print books on Amazon, you might need to change your prices. Starting on June 10th, Amazon's Kindle Direct Publishing will reduce the royalty rate from 60% to 50% for print books priced below $9.99 in the US, $9.99 in Europe, and £7.99, £13.99 Canadian, Australian, and a variety of others in other territories. Amazon says books with list prices at or greater than these prices will continue with their 60% royalty rate. Quote, for the first time since starting print operations almost 2 decades ago, we are changing the royalty rates for books priced below certain list prices from 60 to 50%, Amazon says in a KDP community update. These books represent a unique challenge given increasing operational costs, and this change will allow us to continue offering these books while avoiding impact to other titles. End quote. While many authors are adjusting their prices, some who use low price books as an inexpensive entry point to a series say they plan to accept the lower royalty rate. Amazon says you will be required to comply with the new minimum list price to ensure printing price costs are covered, but the articles don't specify whether they will adjust your price for you or simply delist your book if you haven't updated. One good piece of news for those looking to print their books in color or a special edition. Amazon is reducing color printing costs for paperback in some marketplaces. To learn more and check out Amazon's pricing calculator, you can go to the link in our show notes. So, Rachel, I know this isn't necessarily going to affect a lot of authors, certainly authors who are with publishers, authors who are not doing as much indie releasing, or who already price their books high enough to not really focus on this. But that's okay. That can be our thunder sound ahead of time.
It's our thunder, yeah.
I know. I love it. So the thought here is, though, Amazon, with all of the changes in prices in the world right now, they are bumping those prices up. We have to price more. What were your first thoughts when you heard about this situation?
I didn't really think it at first. I thought they meant ebooks, and I was like, wait, what? And then I was like, oh, print, we're fine. So the panic was like 2 seconds. Then I was like, all right, we're good. I think
Yeah.
for a lot of, I'm going to come at it from like a hybrid or like indie, because I do both traditional and indie publishing.
Right.
For an indie, I don't think it's really going to affect them that much. A lot of indies, we use the print books as a tool more so than anything
Yeah.
else. If you're selling a ton of books as an indie, good job, man, for print books and stuff. That's amazing. But it's a lot of times we're really just pushing, the digital sales. The print is
Yes.
more or less like a way to sell on your store or sell through Amazon to make money, but also, yes, to get them through that gate, to get them through the door. So pricing it differently, I don't think is really going to affect anyone really that much, unless like their
Yeah.
whole thing was doing a very low price, again, to get them in, and they want to keep it at that and keep that royalty rate. But I really don't think it's going to hurt a lot of people for the most part. I think it's just one of those things that we have to adjust with the times and just make it work. And the good and bad news, I guess, about the publishing industry is it's a constant wave. You're constantly just writing, going, okay, how do I adjust? How do I fix this? How do I make this work for me? And I think that a lot of times whenever Amazon too, I'm always thinking, whenever they roll out something like this, I always wonder what's coming after this. Because a lot of
Yes.
times there's this is like a preface to something else. So I always think,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we're not there, our focus is on print, but the reason the print happened is because of something else. So what else is coming? So that's kind of where my thoughts are at right now. But I really don't think it's going to affect people that much. Um, and I also think too, right now, with so many special editions coming out and so many different things, if they're going to lower the price of us being able to do that, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
If we have to charge a little bit more so that we can do special editions through Amazon and make it that much easier, then kudos to Amazon, because that's also kind of stressful sometimes too. So, and again, I think people too, I think me visually as a reader, when I see a print book price, I don't go, oh no, that's a lot of money, because my expectation going into buying an actual physical copy of a book is that it's going to cost a lot more than if I buy a digital copy. And I'm
Yeah.
willing, if I'm already going in buying that book, I'm willing to pay whatever that price is already, unless it's like this astronomical number. So I don't think it's going to affect readership either. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't think it will either. A print, considering how print book costs in a Barnes and Noble, or even just from a traditionally published book that's on Amazon, tends to be way higher than $9.99 anyway. I think readers, if anything, Amazon is kind of forcing, just like it did when it said you can only make 70% if you're above $2.99. Amazon is kind of forcing our hand, and I'm a big proponent of higher pricing, so I
Yeah.
think it's actually a positive thing.
Yeah, value your work more. And I think too, sometimes people forget that people who are more traditional readers, like they're walking through Target, they're walking through the store, when they see
Yep.
higher price points on Amazon, they immediately assume it's going to be a better product, which I know it's not always true, but they assume that, and they have that mindset. So they think, oh, this is from this, it's a traditional book. So they might even be more likely to buy your book because it's more money. And they might feel like, oh, so I know that's also something too that people think as, buyers too. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. We've got a hot potato wisdom question from you to me here. We kind of
Yes.
like going, just skipping around, but we're back towards the beginning.
Back towards the
Um,
beginning.
yeah,
Okay, so I'm curious for you. So how could an author use color printing now that it's become more cost effective?
I am most interested to see how this will impact uh, children's book authors, because
Oh,
if color printing is less, and I know a lot of children's book authors who will print in China, who will find other ways. They'll just do it through Ingram Spark. They won't do it through Amazon. will this actually allow children's book authors to use the color printing and be able to price their books a little bit lower to compete? I don't know the answer to that. It's possible that it's still not low enough, but I'm very interested to know.
Can I go off script here and ask what is the average printing cost of, I mean, how much what is the normal price point, I guess I could say, for a, say, an illustrated book?
No, I've seen like I've seen people lowball it like, $9.99, but here, let me pull up. I have seen people do much higher, and people do kind of the more of the hardcover
Mm-hmm.
situation. But let me see. I have one of my authors who I work with who's great, Dee Dee Dragon. She right now has a paperback at 12,
Okay.
but a hardcover at $24.99, which I do not know if she's doing that hardcover through Ingram Spark or if it is through Amazon KDP. But go check her out because she's
Yeah, I will.
fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so $12 is around what she's doing, and I know she sells a lot of paperback, a lot of hardcover. So I think that that's probably, and it's it's a 30-page book. It's not a
That's a
long book.
yeah, that's a sweet spot. That
Yeah,
that did not shock me at all. I wasn't like, oh no, totally nice.
exactly. So, but I'm interested, like, to see if children's book authors end up utilizing the lower print costs rather than going the Ingram Spark direction or something else. We'll
Yeah.
we'll have to see how it all shakes out.
We will. We
But
will.
yeah, awesome. So we're gonna go into the lightning round.
Okay.
It's your time to shine, Rachel, with
Dun,
a
dun,
lightning
dun.
sound.
That was not lightning, was it? That was more like
Yeah,
lightning mixed with thunder. I tried.
no, that was good. That was
Okay.
good. I love it. So we're skipping the first two because we kind of asked them already. So,
Sorry.
dude, 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 it's all good. Rachel, when should a multi-genre author consider having multiple newsletters?
At this moment right now, I honestly I had never thought of this before. So now
Yeah,
I'm rethinking all of my life choices thanks to you. So I appreciate that. I'm glad that I
anytime.
yeah, literally, I'm questioning everything. Like, I'm not even kidding. I'm like, oh my gosh, you can do that. And what's really dumb is I just got into my newsletter and looked, and I do have different like,
Segments, yeah.
yeah, segments for it, but I've never really thought like, oh, only this newsletter is going to go to people that like mafia, or only people that like rom-com, or maybe I should take a poll and see who, like, that never even occurred to me. So I'm a horrible person to ask this to because now I'm like, okay, tell me all the things. I think that's a great idea. I think if you have a series that all of a sudden is taking off, so say you're known for like Regency romance, you're known for contemporary,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
I'm using ones that I've written before.
yeah,
And
yeah.
all your paranormal just takes off. Like that would make total sense to me that you have like a really cool themed paranormal newsletter that you're sending out, not spamming people every week, but maybe once a month, or, not just when you have a new release, but when things go on sale. I think that's a great idea. I think the whole thing with newsletters, and this is just me being the person that I get overwhelmed when I get too much stuff in my inbox, is how do you
Yeah,
make it to where that person wants to open that newsletter? You know what I mean? Like every single
yeah,
time. And there's only so many little hooks you can put in the subject line. But with that being said, when you have multiple genres,
yeah,
that's maybe what you do is rather than being like, here, let me just blanket all 500 books that I have. Let me just like pigeonhole and tell you exactly what you want because I know that you love this. Here's this, this series. And I think is if you start having multiple genres that are selling well, especially ones that are selling better than other ones, that is when you start pulling that and pushing that.
yeah,
Yeah, and I might start doing that because that's a really good idea. I don't
yeah,
know. What do you
yeah.
think?
And yeah, no, I'm a big fan of splitting if you can, but I also understand when you're just one person or you don't have any help yet. Look, do what you got to do. Do what you got to do to move forward. It's not
Yeah,
always about doing it perfect.
this is true. All right, so moving on to the next question then, what are some tips for dealing with having to send out more emails? Because we just talked about being overwhelmed.
I
So,
know.
what are
I
what are
know.
tips that you have to help with that?
When I talk to some of my coaching students in my Pathfinders group, the biggest thing that people do first is they hire a VA to help with their email. It
Okay.
just helps them so much. But I know not everyone is in the position for that. So
Mhm.
what do you, and we're going to talk about VAs a little bit more in the next episode. But when you have a lot of emails to send out. You're like, oh man, I'm going to have 2 launches in the next 3 months. I got to send emails ahead of time. I got to send them after. When am I going to have time for that? Make the time early,
Oh
because you're
yeah.
not going to want to think about it when you're getting that last edit out to the ARC team. You've got enough to deal with. You can you don't need to come up with your email 5 seconds before. You
Hmm.
can batch process. You can have an email day. You can say, I'm going to write these emails. I do this all the freaking time. Duplicate your old emails and then switch in different blurb or a different link. Like, you can not create from scratch. You can batch process, do it way early, get it done, get it scheduled, and then you're like, oh man, this is just going to happen on its own. Past Brian did this. Current Brian doesn't even need to think about this thing, because past Brian set him up for success. And so,
I love that. No, I like that you said having an email day. That's really great. Not trying to be like, at 1 o'clock, I'm going to write this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to try to do emails and do admin work. I like the idea of just because that's the stuff that most of us don't even like doing. We want to just be
all right.
writing, reading the admin work. You want to just jump off a cliff. So that's great. I like the
Yeah.
whole concept of an email day. Look at you.
Good. I'm glad you
Great,
like it.
great
Awesome.
advice.
I'm giving you all these
I know.
new life choices to
I
make.
feel like I should be paying you right now. Follow me.
No. The pleasure's all mine. So last one for today. How do you balance being all of the parts of a multi-hyphenate person? You brought up mom, screenwriter as well, author, content creator. Um, like, what are the challenges of trying to get all that sorted out in your day-to-day life?
So this is a great question, and it kind of ties back into my answer about spreading yourself too thin. So I used to
Yeah.
always give people advice and say, there's only so much you can do on social media. So pick your favorite, pick your top two,
Mm,
and do those. And I still think that's great advice. Pick two, because you could have all 15 billion of them. I think the danger in being a multi-genre author, multi-hyphenated person, like you said, like being, producer, screenwriter, like, being having your hand in all these little buckets, is that the temptation to constantly spread yourself too thin. And I now, like, I'm in this world, so I need to join that social media, or I need to have Discord now, or I need to, like, you see
yeah.
all these new shiny new things, and you think,
Yeah.
oh, that's the next new thing, I need to do that. Or, like, I think especially this is a great example, book talk. TikTok. People were freaking out about things going viral, so all of a sudden everyone needs to have TikTok. Everyone needs to focus on that. Everyone needs to, like, and it's kind of like when it happened, Instagram, it happened the same way. It all kind of,
Yes.
like, you see that wave, how everything happens. And it's like, you're never going to be successful unless you can do like 3 TikToks a day and you do them 5 days a week. And it's so easy, even as a seasoned author, to fall into that habit of being like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And then you end up doing nothing well. You literally end up doing
Right.
nothing well. And then you try to figure out, like, where did I go wrong? And it's like, well, Rachel, you woke up and you tried to do an Instagram and it wasn't that great. And then you posted to a story, but you spelled this wrong because you're going too fast. And then when you sent out your newsletter, you forgot your links. And then after that, you forgot, that when you did a live, you had like a stain on your shirt. And then you were trying to write this chapter, but you used someone else's name from another book you're writing because you have that manuscript open, because you have that edit open. Like, do you see where I'm going with this? None of this makes sense. So going back to focusing on what you can only control and what you can only do, which is why I love your idea of an email day. That is how I do it, because I need to find the success in today. I got my edit done for that one book today. My only goal was to post on, on Instagram, or to at least get a picture up, get content up. And then also delegating. For the longest time, was like, I don't want to delegate to anyone. I want people to know that they're talking to me and me only.
Mm.
I don't want people in my email. And I think early on in the indie days, that was a great idea because that's how I built my fan base. But now it's people just will take and take and take. And I'm very empathetic. So I'm just going to give. And then I will have nothing left. And then I'll wonder, why am I reacting even in normal life to people the way that I am? Why do I have rage? I don't know. So I think it's really good, again, to, like, come back and be like, okay, what can I do today? And what can I focus on? And looking at your week and really planning it out. And as a pantser, that is very hard for me because that's how I am
Yes.
just in everyday life anyways. And so it's really forced me. I'm saying this as I'm looking at my 2 different calendars I have on my makeshift little desk right here. I've had to do that. And I think that that's where you just kind of have to check yourself. And so I literally every week will, beginning of the week, sit down and be like, okay, This is what this week looks like. This is what I'm going to try to accomplish on this day. I have it written down. I'm going to cross it off when I'm done. And that's really what I have to. I have to take it very old school, very slow. And again, reel back and be like, okay, what can I focus on? Well, you know what? Instagram's going to post across everything, so I can do that today, and then I
Yep.
can do this tomorrow. So I've really just tried to slow down and do that, because I think, again, once you get caught up in that, it's such a trap. It's such a trap mentally and emotionally to try to do all the things, and then you're not doing anything. Then you're just sitting there like stressed out, wondering why your books aren't selling. I think
Right.
that's the trap that you can find yourself in. So it's really just kind of reeling back and focusing on what you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Slow and steady.
Mhm.
Slow and steady, even though it's annoying.
Yes.
But great thoughts there. Great advice there, Rachel. So we need a question of the week. I was really enticed by this idea of kind of finding your why.
Yes.
Can we just ask, what is your why for being an author?
My why for being an author is actually personal, in that it allows me to express myself creatively and get my anxiety and my feelings and all my things out onto a page that I know that
Mm,
eventually some person will read. And if they're going through the same thing or have gone through it, they're either going to feel relief, they're going to identify with it, or they're going to understand it more when they see it in real life, someone else going through it. So that is my why.
I love it. I love it. Let me think of my why. And we're going to ask this question of the week to everybody, too. What is
Yes.
your why for being an author? I mean, I mostly write nonfiction, and I want people to do well. I
I
just
love
want people to live up to potential and then go beyond it.
Oh,
And it's so much fun for me to see someone who was stuck get out of it. And it's one of the reasons why, look, probably could have stopped this podcast a few years ago, but I know it's still helping people. And so here we are, 11 years in, every single Wednesday. And we're still doing it because I know there's still people who benefit. And I just love being able to help those folks.
I
So,
think that's beautiful. And I love you said, I want them to live up and beyond. Like that could just be a
mm,
quote right there. Live up and beyond. I literally had a visual of just like, here's your hand, but you want people to
mm-hmm.
jump over this up here. Like that's such a powerful statement right there. I love that. Live up and
I'm
beyond.
writing it. I'm writing it
You need to.
down. If it resonated with you, I'm
Yes.
writing it down. I'm bolding it.
Yes.
But thank you.
Yeah.
Uh, y'all, you can answer the question of the week over at the Sell More Book Show After Party Facebook group, or at sellmorebookshow.com. So if you want to read a variety of genres, go to rachelvandykenauthor.com, where you can check out all of her great books, find out more or where to connect with her. But this has been a delight, Rachel. I've loved having you on the show today.
It's been so fun. Thank you. I've loved talking with you.
Yay, same. Folks, Rachel will be back for another episode next week, which is really just in 5 seconds, the way that we're recording this. But Rachel will be back. I'll be back. I hope all of you have a great week of book selling, and we'll be back next week for episode 582. Bye.
Bye, guys.